pretty well. Refraction is when a ray of light passes through a media, the light ray no longer goes in the same direction, but it deviates. And you should be well aware of the
This conference will now be recorded.
critical angle and total internal reflection. The second slide ఎట్లా పోవాలి? ఇక్కడనేనా? Okay. Right. Now there some lenses has been shown. You can see the first one is biconvex, plano-convex, biconcave, plano-concave, and simple lens. The another one is prism. So prisms are also useful in correction of refractive errors. So here the same thing, refraction, where the deviation will be towards the base. Okay, you can see here, the one is biconvex and the other one is biconcave. Biconvex lens is nothing but you can see the two prisms with base abutting each other, and the biconcave is prisms, the apex is being opposed. So the eye is not a perfect medium for refraction. There will be some aberrations. So the aberrations are being diffraction, chromatic aberration, spherical aberration, and distortions will be there. We will discuss about it later on. But suffice it to know that there will be aberrations, and mainly we are very much concerned with chromatic aberration and spherical aberrations. So this is the spherical aberration. Here you can see the light rays refracting from periphery are converged more than the rays along the principal axis. So this is one aberration. That means all the light rays passing through that media has not come to a point focus, but there are different foci, right? This is called a spherical aberration. And here, this is chromatic aberration. In chromatic aberration, you can see the convergence or the refraction is more for blue light than for the red light. That means the blue light converges in front of the retina, whereas the red light focuses it on retina. So this is also an aberration which needs to be understood when we are giving corrections. This is Snellen's chart. You can see the alphabets are there, or the Landau's ring or C-shaped one for illiterate people. So this Snellen's chart is essential because we don't know what is the normal, or most of the people don't know what is the normal vision. So there must be some scientific criteria to measure the normal vision, isn't it? So this Snellen chart is being designed and there are different rows. So if the person is able to read the topmost letter, the representation of visual acuity is 6 by 60, and if he is able to read the last row, it is 6 by 6. So the normal vision of a person is 6 by 6. If person is able to read up to the last line, he will be given a 6 visual acuity, which is normal. So this is also same thing. Here it is E chart, what we can say that is for illiterates, and this side you have numbers, numerals. So this is also Snell lens chart. Okay, here a simple pinhole camera you are seeing. Our eye is compared like that. Our eye same acts as a pinhole camera. You know it pretty well that we are able to see the objects only when the light falls on them, and the reflected light, when it enters into our eye, they forms images on the retina, and the retinal images will be upside down, and when they are transmitted to the brain or occipital cortex where vision is appreciated, there again uh, the upside down and all those things will be rectified. Okay, now vaguely we may be able to say that one is having normal vision. So the definition of normal vision or emmetropia. Emmetropia means normal vision, who is having no refractive errors. So the definition is like this. When the parallel rays comes to a point focus on the sentient layers of retina, then the eyeball is at rest. So once again, rays coming from an infinite object are supposed to be parallel rays, or rays coming from a distance more than 6 meters are considered as parallel rays. So the parallel rays, when after refraction through cornea and lens, if they come to a point focus on the sentient layers of the retina, that is called as normal vision. And the eyeball should be at rest. Eyeball at rest means no active accommodation. When the accommodation is relaxed, it is the eyeball is at rest. So when we discuss about the refractive errors, it goes the definition, then the etiology. In the etiology, the cause may be the length of the eyeball is smaller or longer. That is axial length of the eyeball. Or in other words, simply eyeball is either smaller or larger. If the eyeball is larger, it results in myopia, and if the eyeball is smaller, it results in hypermetropia. The normal axial length being 24 millimeters. Here you can see a difference of 1 millimeter in the axial length results in 3 diopters refractive error. Similarly, curvature of the cornea, if 1 millimeter curvature is different, then 6 diopters of defect will be there. Then the another cause is index, refractive index. The refraction differs in different media, that means which are having different refractive index. Then absence of lens, of course, it is aphakia, which results in high hypermetropia. So in etiology, we are having either the eyeball is bigger or smaller, or the curvature of the cornea is more or less. Similarly, change in the refractive index of the lens or aqueous or vitreous, or absence of the lens. These are the causes for the refractive errors. Then the refractive errors, common refractive errors are myopia, hypermetropia, astigmatism, and presbyopia. So now let us start a discussion about myopia. In vague terms, myopia is also called as short-sightedness. In layman's terms, what people say is short sight. So our term is myopia. The definition is the refractive condition in which parallel rays of light come to a point focus in front of the sentient layers of the retina when the eyeball is at rest. two terms you must understand. Sentient layer is nothing but the sensitive layer of the retina. Then eyeball at rest means no accommodation. Accommodation is not acting. So these two terms must be there in the definition of any refractive error. So once again, the definition of myopia is a condition wherein the parallel rays of light comes to a point focus in front of the uh, sensitive layer of the retina when the eyeball is at rest. So conventionally it is classified as simple myopia, progressive myopia and developmental myopia. Right? So most of the people will have simple myopia. The conventionally, if the error is less than 6 diopters, that is called as simple myopia. Up to 6 diopters defect, it is called as simple myopia. Then if we go to etiology, simple myopia is transmitted as autosomal dominant and degenerative or pathological myopia is an autosomal recessive. And it is more common in Jews and Japanese. Okay, to represent it simple optically, you can see in the first picture, yeah, the blue lights which are parallel, they are coming and after getting refracted at cornea and lens, you can see they are coming to a point focus in front of the retina. You can see in the picture, the point focus of the blue rays is in front of the retina. As per the definition, you know it pretty well. When the parallel rays comes to a point focus in front of the retina, when the accommodation is at rest. And in the second picture, you can see it can be corrected. Myopia will be corrected by biconcave lenses or minus lenses. Conventionally, we give biconcave is represented as minus, whereas biconvex is represented as plus lenses. So the correction of the myopia is done by minus lenses or biconcave lenses. You can see when the biconcave lens is kept in front of the eye, the convergence or the rays are coming to a point focus on the retina. So that is how the myopia is rectified. Okay, as per the etiology, we can see the defect can be in the length of the eyeball or in the size of the eyeball. The common cause being it can be congenital or albinism, in albinism, and there can be posterior staphyloma. It is nothing but ectasia of the posterior pole. Then Buphthalmus. Buphthalmus is a condition in that is congenital glaucoma in children. There, the eyeball becomes bigger because of the raised intraocular pressure. So, because of the raised intraocular pressure in children, not in adults, in children, because of the elasticity of the tissues, the eyeball becomes bigger, and as I told you, when the eyeball becomes bigger, it results in myopia or myopic shift, you can say. Then even after RD surgery, retinal detachment surgeries also, the eyeball is elongated. In retinal detachment surgeries, we are having a procedure called as buckling, wherein the eyeball in the center is uh, tightened to give the tympanic effect so that retina gets attached. So in that also, in the RD surgery also, it results in myopias. Then we are having curvature etiology, wherein the curvature is more. That is in keratoconus or in ciliary spasm or accommodative spasm, and
Yeah.
The next one is index, that is the refractive index. Whenever there is change in the refractive index of the media, whether it is lens or vitreous, it results in myopia. So it can be because of the nuclear cataract, wherein the refractive index is increased. Similarly, in hyperglycemia, in diabetic patients, whenever the sugar levels are not under control, there may be temporary shift of to the myopia and abnormal position of the elements of the eye, wherein there is anterior dislocation of the lens. So, if we go into the etiology of the myopia, it can be because of the increased length of the axis or bigger size of the eyeball, or it is because of the more curvature, that is because of the cornea, then increased refractive index because of the changes in cataract, then abnormal position of the uh, lens, wherein the lens is placed a little anterior to its original location. Okay. Then coming on to the symptoms, the main symptom will be defective vision for distance. So the child will say that he is not able to see the distant objects, or in the classroom always the child tries to sit in the front rows, or if the defect is higher, whenever he reads, he will keep the book very close to his face. If you observe the child, so defective vision for distance, as I told you, then eye strain or asthenopia, headaches will be there. These are all vague symptoms. Asthenopia means the patient complains there is some pain in and around the eye. It is a vague symptom. Then photopsia and floaters. The child or the person will say some black spots will be appearing in front of the eyes. Then there can be squinting of the eyes. It may result in strabismus. Usually, divergence is caused by myopia. And there is blepharitis, conjunctivitis, and recurrent styes. All these are because of the rubbing of the eyes that results in infections. And again, there can be floaters and total loss of vision due to retinal detachment. So these are the symptoms. Then signs, that's what you observe, is large and prominent eyeballs. I told you in the myopia, the eyeball size is bigger. Most of the times, myopia is because of the congenitally big size of the eyeball. Big size means the variation is very small. As I told you, only 1 millimeter difference in the axial length will result in an error of 3 diopters. So, a bigger eyeball, then if you observe, the sclera will be thin, the anterior chamber will be deep, and the pupil is a little larger than in routine persons. Then there can be posterior staphyloma. This can be seen either by B scan or by indirect ophthalmoscopy, not direct segment. This is the posterior segment finding. You will be able to appreciate it only by indirect ophthalmoscopy and B scan. Then the fundus is tessellated, tigroid fundus, what we call. Tessellated fundus will be there. A temporal myopic crescent is there on the optic disc, and there can be Foster fuse flex. This is mild bleeding resulted in posterior segment. Then peripheral cystic degeneration, lattice degeneration, retinal holes, and retinal detachment. Except the first one, that is anterior segment findings, all these posterior segment findings can be appreciated only if you are good at indirect ophthalmoscopy, right? So signs, once again, the eyeball size is bigger, the sclera is thin, the anterior chamber is deep, the pupil is a little larger. Then in the posterior segment, you have posterior staphyloma, tessellated fundus, and peripheral cystic degenerations and retinal detachment. So this is, you can see in the upper one, there is traction or crescent in the optic disc, and there is fuchs bleeding in the lower one. So this. Now let us discuss the differences between the simple and degenerative myopia. In simple myopia, usually the refractive error will be less than 6 diopters. Transmission is by autosomal dominance, and when you give correction with lenses, normal vision is restored. That is 6/6 vision will be restored, and there is no degenerative changes in the posterior segment. If you look at the degenerative myopia or pathological myopia, usually the refractive error will be more than 6 diopters, and the transmission is autosomal recessive, and vision with correction is less than 6/6. That means full correction is not possible. In pathological myopia or degenerative myopia, full correction may not be restored even with the correction. Then the degenerative changes, there can be vitreous degeneration, posterior vitreous detachment, fuchs, bleeding points, as I told you. Then there can be cystic degeneration, retinal holes, and retinal detachment. So you should understand the difference between the simple myopia and degenerative myopia. Conventionally, 6 diopters is taken as, up to 6 diopters it is called as simple myopia. More than it is degenerative myopia. It is only conventional, it need not be. It should be associated only with posterior segment degeneration. Then only it should be dubbed as degenerative myopia. Then the course of myopia, you can see in simple, which occurs at 5 to 10 years and increases up to 21 years, and usually the error will be up to 6 diopters. So the progression will be up to 21 years only. After 21 years, it gets stabilized. You know it pretty well. When we advise when anybody wants to go for LASIK surgery, we will ask them to wait up to 21 years, because after 21 years, usually there will not be any progression of the error. Then the degeneration in degenerative myopia, I mean, here the progression will be even beyond 21 years, and usually the refractive error will be more than 6 diopters. Then developmental myopia is there, wherein there won't be any progress. Now, how you evaluate the refractive error? Now we have discussed till now the refractive error about myopia. There, as I told you, the definition, then etiology, symptoms, findings, right? So if we want to summarize, the definition will be, it is a refractive error wherein the parallel rays comes to a point focus in front of the retina when the eyeball is at rest. And in etiology, we have seen the axial length is increased, or in other words, the eyeball size is bigger, the curvature of the cornea is more, then the refractive index may be increased, or the lens may be placed a little anterior to the regular position. So these are the causes. And in symptoms, you see the child is not able to see the distant objects clearly. Then here there will be some vague complaints like asthenopia and sometimes recurrent infections of the adnexa of the eye, that is blepharitis, like that. So now how you evaluate? So for the evaluation, if we go step by step, it is retinoscopy, then direct and indirect ophthalmoscopy, A scan, and IOP. So IOP is done by applanation tonometry. Of course, nowadays non-contact tonometers are also available. Then A scan, if you see in the department, we are having an A scan which works on the ultrasonic principle, which determines the length of the eyeball. By doing A scan, you are measuring the axial length of the eyeball. Then the associated conditions with myopia are divergent squint, chronic simple glaucoma, retinal detachment, retinitis pigmentosa. I told you the divergent squint. Divergent squint means deviation of the eyeball laterally, right? In myopia, it may occur. Then it may be associated with chronic simple glaucoma, wherein the angle is wider, but still the IOP is raised. Then there can be retinal detachments, especially in degenerative myopias. Then we are having a condition known as retinitis pigmentosa, is a condition wherein the patient is not able to see in the nights, or night vision is defective. These are the conditions they can be associated with myopia. So now how you treat or management, you can say whether it is management or treatment. The most common one, the cheapest one, and the most accepted one is the spectacles. So the correction is with the spectacles by prescribing spectacles, that is concave glasses. I told you concave glasses are conventionally they are represented as minus sign. So minus glasses are concave glasses. Then they can also be corrected with contact lenses. If some people are not interested to use spectacles because of the cosmetic reason, they can be advised contact lenses. But the contact lenses is a very cumbersome process. It is first thing expensive, second thing the removal and applying daily you have to remove, isn't it? So for an old people and for children it is not suitable. Only for educated, highly motivated, who can bear the expenses, they only can go for contact lenses. So nowadays the surgical options are also available for the treatment of myopia. Previously we are having either contact lenses and specs prescriptions, whereas nowadays of late it is become very popular, the LASIK surgeries. LASIK surgery is nothing but the modulation of the shape of the cornea by lasers. So we are having three types of LASIK surgery or surgery with lasers, that is LASIK, PRK and LASIK. There is slight variations in this, especially suffice it to say that if the cornea is thin, if the cornea is less than 400 microns, you know it pretty well, the cornea thickness is anywhere around 400 to 500 microns. So if the corneal thickness is less than 450 or 400, they are advised LASIK. That means epithelial keratomiliosis. LASIK is laser assisted in situ keratomiliosis. LASIK is epithelial keratomiliosis, laser assisted epithelial keratomiliosis. So in thin cornea, LASIK is advised. In cornea wherein normal thickness is there, that is more than 450, LASIK is advised. And the second option in surgeries is phakic IOLs or piggyback IOLs we call. That means you place a lens over the existing natural lens. That is, in other words, the contact glasses what you give, which sits over the cornea, here the lens is kept over the lens. I mean our natural lens, the crystalline lens. So that is phakic IOLs. Then corneal intacts or intracorneal rings, it is not much in vogue, but for academic interest it will be given. Similarly, the clear lens extraction is also there. If the high myopic error is there, say around -18 or -20, so in those cases, you can remove the existing lens, then the patient becomes normal. He doesn't require any glasses. Then radial keratotomy is also an option. It is also almost obsolete, but here and there people may be doing this procedure. So in all these LASIK surgeries and radial keratotomy, what we are doing is we are modulating or we are changing the curvature of the cornea. So the curvature of the cornea in myopia is deeper. So if you reduce or if you flatten the cornea, then the myopia will be corrected. So here a little details about the LASIK is being given. So laser assisted in situ keratomiliosis, the LASIK, if you expand it. So the aim is to flatten the central cornea. When you are supposed to do or when you will go for LASIK surgery, when the myopia is stable. As I told you, in simple myopia, it will become stable only after 21 years. So if anybody wants to go for LASIK surgery, they should wait up to 21 years because till then there is possibility of progression. So what are the contraindications then? The contraindications are glaucoma or any rheumatoid arthritis and collagen vascular diseases, dry eye and cataract. Cataract as such cannot be called as a contraindication. When there is cataract, you do cataract surgery and you place an appropriate IOL so that the myopia is corrected. So when once cataract is there, there is no point in going for LASIK or any other things. So this is how the topography or the corneal thickness is verified. The keratometry, pachymetry is nothing but the thickness of the cornea. So the thickness of the cornea and the different meridians, the curvature in different meridians is by keratometry. Because nowadays we are having lasers, advanced type of lasers, wherein the tailor-made, what we can say. That means it modifies or flattens the cornea according to the need. So here simply it is given in pictures, you can see. So a flap is being raised, hinged corneal flap is being raised. You can see here. See here, this is the flap is raised from the anterior portion of the cornea. Then a laser beam, which is shown in pink color. The laser beam is there. And later on, when the cornea is flattened, or the anterior stroma is flattened, again the flap is placed over it. So this is simply explained in 3 steps, wherein a flap is raised, the cornea is flattened, then again the flap is kept back. This is of course machinery, not needed. So this is photorefractive keratectomy, wherein the flap is not raised. It is simply the central cornea is modulated. This is radial keratotomy, wherein radial incisions are being given according to the required power. So there is some algorithms wherein you can calculate what should be the depth of the incisions. Of course, this procedure is nowadays it is abandoned almost. After the arrival of these LASIK surgeries, now this procedure is no longer being used. Okay, now we have finished myopia. Shall we stop here? Stop here now. 12, huh? Okay, in the IPN, the next class, we will discuss about the hypermetropia and astigmatism. Okay, thank you.